Welcome back to the SEO Weekly, where queries are weird, advice is controversial, and everything depends. I'm your host, Garrett Osman of iPullRank, and each week I cover everything in the world of SEO, blog posts, tools, reports, studies, you name it. This week, however, is the last episode that I'll be doing actually for 4 weeks. As you can see, I will be spending time with my all-time favorite entity in the world, my daughter. We're going to focus on some crawling. We're going to render with a diaper. I'm going to work on my technical dad skills, if you will. That said, I will be back. In the meantime, we'll be producing lots of great rankable episode interviews coming out each week on Wednesday, so definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel if you want to get notifications for when those are coming out, and feel free to go back to some of the old SEO Weekly episodes. A lot of the stuff that we covered was new at the time, but still relevant to what you're doing in your world of SEO. This week, a lot of great stuff. So we've got You've got a ton of backlinks, but you aren't ranking as high. What can you do? We asked a bunch of people in the industry. Great study all around 404s versus 410s. What should you use? Does it even matter? And pros and cons, like annotations in the actual SERPs. What do those look like? Where do they come from? Can you get them? Okay, let's dive in. So first off, Google Search Console, their blog, they put up a nice kind of summary which will be added to that includes all of the algorithm updates. So whether these are core updates or specific updates like the product review updates, they now have these kind of listed out where you can go see where they were initially rolled out and any pertinent information that was included in that initial rollout, as well as when that ended. Great research on the Google Search Central blog to pay attention to. It's really nice that Google actually lets us know that they're rolling things out, right? So Martin Splitt did another one of his awesome lightning talks. This one was all about HTML source code versus what is rendered HTML. He breaks down the technical processes that Google does when it looks at your HTML and why something might be rendered and something wouldn't. If you're a non-dev SEO, this is a great video for you to check out and watch because it kind of gives you that insights even if you don't know, the details. You couldn't do it yourself, but it's nice to know how the donuts are made, if you will. In the world of Twitter, Alex Harford had a solid Twitter thread all about, you see all of these checklists, right? In the world of SEO, especially technical SEO. Do this, do that, do this, do that. Well, Alex kind of points out that, yeah, these checklists are helpful, but they're not a solution for critical thinking and being able to prioritize and solve problems. I like the way that he laid it out. He did give a shout out to Annie Cushing, who has her analytics checklist that he used back in the day. Like if you're getting started, checklists are valuable and they're a great way to kind of inform your processes and have you, create repeatable processes so you don't miss things, but don't use it as a crutch. Don't use it as the only way to get things done. You got to be able to think outside the box, especially for some of these complicated SEO issues. Bill Hartzer posed an interesting question to the Twitter community. He said, for searches on internal pages of your website, should you allow that to be indexable? Now, it was interesting, a range of different opinions, and like anything in SEO, it depends is what everyone said. But, Dr. Marie Haynes was all like, I think that Google's covered that in the past in their documentation. And Glenn Gabe was like, yep, there it is. They actually say that you should prevent Google from crawling these internal search pages using your robot text file. Now, what's interesting is, sure, it could actually produce some nice traffic in the short term, but in the long term, at any point, Google could pull out the rug under you. A few different SEOs recommended maybe you curate these internal search pages, or at the very least, build content from the questions that your users are asking. That's a great way to use it, but should you make it indexable? Probably not in most cases. So one issue that's been highlighted recently by Myriam Jessier, and she put together a great little kind of Twitter GIF that I thought was really worth sharing, was all about the problem with language linguistics, especially in Romance languages when it comes to gendered language. So, in French, for instance, when you look at, an expert using French, it's gendered male, and the results a lot of times are gendered male, and that's very problematic. It's this inherent bias in the language, the gender of the language for women or non-binary people that is unfair. It's something that Google needs to solve. It'll be interesting to see, as MUM as an algorithm is very focused on incorporating different languages, if it understands this entity in terms of gender or if it's still problematic. That said, when it comes to these ideas, Myriam's been covering a lot lately, so she's a great follow on Twitter. Check her out. There is a new book by Maddy, Osman. So it's available for pre-purchase now. It's going to be released on July 18th, but it's all about writing for humans and robots. It's kind of her new rules of content style, an epic, 355-page guide, all about, keyword research and writing that appeals to the user, to the person who's going to actually read your stuff, but also taking into consideration what search engines are looking for. We do that a lot at iPullRank as well, all about content engineering, but Maddy's kind of put together this AP style guide for that type of writing. I'm really excited to dive into this. You can get it on Kindle, find the link in the description. Maddy is brilliant when it comes to writing content that is, indexed and ranked and does really well for her target keywords. So this woman knows what she's talking about. Get the book. So I kind of missed this one last week and wanted to include it, but Brody Clark did a kind of depiction of 5 different reasons that you might see your impressions for a given URL skyrocket, but you're not actually seeing clicks or traffic to your website. What he breaks down is identifying those moments where it's not in the normal search appearances in Google Search Console, for instance, FAQs or review snippets or anything like that. You're seeing these impressions go up and you don't know why. 5 reasons that he found is, for instance, it could be something like internal site links. So if you have the main listing, but then you have 5 little blue links, then they don't always generate traffic, but they do count as links in Google Search Console. Images in an image pack. So your images show up, they count as impression, Google sees them, but nobody's actually clicking onto them. Same goes for actually images in the knowledge panel is another reason. Those images show up, great, you got some visibility, but it's going to give you impressions in Google Search Console, not actual clicks. Links in tweet carousels, which are ephemeral. They're there for a minute. The last link on your company profile or individual mentions your article. Boom, lots of impressions. No one's clicking on that. If anything, they're probably clicking on the tweet and then clicking on the link. So you won't actually get that attributed to Google Search. And then finally, web stories in the visual stories unit. Just another visual. Obviously, a lot of visuals where you're showing up, but people aren't clicking on it. Good article by Brody. So Gianluca Fiorelli put together, so he says he doesn't usually write about black hat related stories, but he couldn't help himself. Basically, it was this PBM, this link network, where they disguised themselves, that's so shady, disguised themselves as a government agency and wrote to other government agencies that they need to include this information on their page. And because it was so trivial, the other government agencies didn't think twice about it. And in that content that they provided, they kind of snuck in a secret, deceptive link to their PBN link websites. Google really hasn't caught it, and they get those high value backlinks, and the rankings of their websites and these articles soar. It's really problematic. It makes SEOs look like jerks, especially when it is covered in the news, which this ultimately was, despite not being fixed by Google. I do appreciate Gianluca shining a light on stories like these. They exist. You shouldn't do black hat because, it's shady and it's bad, and eventually you'll get penalized anyway. That said, this is what's going on out there in SEO. So zero search volume keywords have been pretty much a theme over the last few months that come up because SEO tools have all of these keywords where they say nobody's searching for them. But time after time, SEOs prove that they're generating a ton of traffic from these no volume search keywords. So Tori Gray basically put together this great article. She asked a bunch of smart SEOs in the industry, like, how do you A, find these types of keywords, and then B, optimize for them? I loved the way she used a lot of Google's native tools, basically related search, autocomplete, looking in Google Search Console to see what people are actually searching for and clicking on, and then kind of aggregating all this together and optimizing your content for those zero search volume keywords. That said, she does caution people not to tweak, your content too much to target those terms, because you might ultimately lose your traffic from the very high volume search terms. So always be careful with that, but you should not ignore, the people also ask all of these different, clues as to what people are actually searching for, even if SEO SaaS tools are telling you there's no search volume. So on the iPullRank blog, we had our very inaugural first article published by Danielle Antos. She is a brilliant writer and had her cover backlinks. So imagine a scenario, you've got a ton of backlinks, and yet there's an article that's ranking above you for a targeted keyword that doesn't have nearly as many backlinks. Well, the reason it's interesting is we all think of backlinks as this really important key factor as to why you're ranking, and you'll see most SEOs will argue that backlinks matter. That said, we reached out to the community, and there are a bunch of ways that you can rank above those other articles that have less backlinks. She also kind of went into like why fewer backlinks articles would rank higher, but diving into the content, getting rid of like the spammy backlinks that have no value or coming from sketchy sites, solving the user's problems with the actual content, like make sure that it's valuable content. Look at the SERPs and adjust for intent, which I love to do, which is like when you have a keyword, look at what's actually showing up in the SERP and adjust your content to make sure that whatever like the other articles that are showing up, that's what users want to find for that keyword. Make your article reflect that. So many great insights from that article. Definitely check that out. Excited for all the articles that Danielle's going to be writing for us going forward. Dr. Marie Haynes noticed these pros and cons annotations that are showing up in the SERP. So you have your article, you have your little meta description, and then beneath that, Google is surfacing these pros with an attribute or two, cons with an attribute or two. Where are they coming from? How do you get them? Are they going to stick around? So first off, they might not be the same exact mechanism, but in local SEO, we've seen the similar thing called justifications, whether they were snippets of reviews or attributes from reviews written for a site. Myriam Ellis actually wrote a great blog post last year on Moz all about these local SEO justifications that were relevant to local intent results. But what Dr. Marie Haynes was finding looks like it's more generalized, not just local. And so actually, Simone De Palma did a Twitter thread kind of explaining the patent behind this and how Google was surfacing this text using n-grams and then doing some sentiment analysis on the words to surface why it's good versus bad. It's really interesting that this is appearing, and it'll be interesting to see if Google does more of this going forward, if there are any other like annotations that start to show up. But it's a great article by Dr. Haynes. Check it out. Jackie Chu, broke it down for those of us who use Google Sheets. I'm a Google Sheets user. I don't use Excel as much. I do when I have to, but if I had to choose, I choose Google Sheets. She broke down a bunch of formulas and use cases to use Google Sheets for SEO. So for instance, she covered, how you can use these formulas for keyword management, internationalization, content URL management, or even like producing dashboards. It's very actionable. She gives you the exact formulas that you use and how you would use it. This is on Search Engine Land. Awesome article by Jackie. And then in technical SEO, so Oliver Sisson of Reboot put together this really interesting study. So you have your 404s, which is when Google is trying to find a URL that someone clicks on and nothing's returned, going to a 404 kind of error page. Then you have 410 pages. And what that is when you've actually let Google know that you have removed the content intentionally, so it doesn't necessarily think it's a mistake. It's intentional, right? So 12 years ago, 2010, John Mueller basically said that if you use 410s, you are letting Google know, and so Google will de-index those URLs from Google faster, which will be more efficient and effective for your SEO. And so Oliver decided to do a study to see if this was actually the case and whether or not you should do it. And so he went through his methodology, he looked at different URLs, removed internal links, had some internal links, and broke it down and found that, in fact, if you give the directive for the 410 code as opposed to the 404, it will be crawled less. It won't be recrawled as often as a 404 and removed from indexing sooner. So, his example of why this might matter is like if you have a hack site, you might want to remove it very quickly. Other than that, it's kind of trivial, but it's probably a better practice if there's any urgency there for getting something de-indexed. OnCrawl had a great article by Gemma Fontenay, and this was all about like why your website might not be surfaced for a specific country or region. And she goes through a whole list of different reasons as to why that's the case. Very comprehensive. Some of it's pretty technical, but a lot of it focuses on, language translations and transcriptions, the way that you set up hreflang for specific, specific parts of your website, using Google Search Console and the international report to actually target a specific country, which should only be used in certain cases. She has like 11 different reasons of why that might not be the case. So if you work for an international website or you work with international clients, definitely a great read from Gemma there. In terms of tools and features, Sean Anderson of HoboWeb put together, speaking of checklists, we covered it earlier with Alex Harford, but this is a really comprehensive checklist that you can use for free and access, covers everything from like technical SEO and content. It does provide some prioritization. Now, as mentioned above, you shouldn't use this as a crutch. You should always, think outside the box. But if you're just getting started and you need like a over-the-top comprehensive checklist, the one by Sean and his team is pretty dope. It's pretty cool. Link in the description for that. And then Ahrefs, Nick Cherlich put together a 14 free Chrome SEO extension tools. We've covered SEO extension tools a lot over the last few weeks, whether it's AWRs or Mobile Moxie or even Christina's. Basically lists all these different SEO Chrome extensions that you can use to get information about a specific page at a given time. Just set that up. Check out the Ahrefs article for that. Great list, and they're free. And who doesn't love free things? And finally, as I mentioned last week, but Rankable is back. Had the first episode with Chima Meje. She joined me talking all about earning brand authority using topic clusters. It was a great conversation. We deep dive. We did this new segment all about rapid fire rankings where I asked her top tools, who inspires her in the industry. Chima is awesome. You should definitely check out the episode. I love chatting with her. And I've got a whole bunch of these episodes coming out every Wednesday going forward. Next week, I will be joined by Cindy Crum. And Cindy will be talking all about like entity first indexing and entity SEO. The topic is Google is squeezing the SERPs with mum. So basically, why are organic search listings kind of falling out of the search results pages? Love talking to Cindy. She's brilliant. Definitely keep your eyes peeled for that episode. That's it. Last SEO Weekly for 4 or 5 weeks until I'm back mid-August. I'm gonna miss y'all, but as I mentioned, if you enjoy this, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, share on social. Really appreciate you taking the time and hope you geek out about SEO the way that I am. I am going to head out and go spend time with my daughter and be a girl dad and do crawling things. Appreciate you guys. Catch you in a month and a half, month or so. Peace out.